Mike Pompeo this morning was asked about Donald Trump being briefed on the Russians paying bounties to Taliban fighters to kill American soldiers, and his response raises a lot more questions than it answers. So let's take a look at what Mike Pompeo had to say, and then we'll get into it.
I don't want to comment on the intelligence. The CIA has put out a statement. The DNI has put out a statement. But I can tell you the intelligence community handled this incredibly well. We see threats in intelligence reporting to our soldiers stationed all over the world every single day. Every single day. And so I can assure you that whatever reporting it is that you're referring to, that we responded in precisely the correct way with respect to making sure that our forces were postured appropriately, that they were aware of the level of the threat, the credibility of the threat, and that we were there. Second, the fact that the Russians are engaged in Afghanistan in a way that's adverse to the United States is nothing new. By the way, some members of Congress are out there today suggesting that they are shocked and appalled by this. They saw the same intelligence that we saw. So it would be interesting to ask them what they did when they saw whatever intelligence is that they are referring to. They would have had access to this information as well. Not just the intelligence committees, by the way, even more broadly than that. We took this seriously. We handled it appropriately. The Russians have been selling small arms that put Americans at risk there for 10 years. We've objected to it. To your point, when I meet with my Russian counterparts, I talk with them about this each time. Stop this. We think we have a not perfect, but somewhat overlapping objective in Afghanistan. It's on their doorstep. We know they were routed in Afghanistan, right? So they have an objective there too, to reduce the risk of terrorism there. So yes, maybe not every time, but with great frequency, when I speak to my Russian counterparts, we talk about Afghanistan. We talk about the fact that we don't want them engaged in this, but it's just so everybody can be level set. Money flowing to Afghanistan to support the Taliban has been going on since we went to Afghanistan, now almost 2 decades ago. It's not just the Russians. Indeed, probably not the majority of the Russians. Money's flowed from lots of places, from Iran. Even today, the Iranians continue to undermine what we're trying to accomplish in terms of peace and reconciliation in Afghanistan. It's incredibly important that you take in context how it is this reporting is developed and how it is the United States has responded to this. We do everything we can. And this president has been vicious in securing American freedom and protecting American soldiers. Last point, there's some suggested somehow that there was an appropriate response taken because this was Russia. If you have 20 minutes, I will read to you what this administration has done with respect to Russia. But instead, I'll just provide it to you for the record. But it starts with a $700 billion allocation of resources to the Department of Defense. It continues with withdrawal from the INF, something the Russians remain unhappy about. What we've done in Syria to push back against them, including against the Wagner Group. This administration has taken seriously the threat from Russia. I only wish we had not had so much to clean up from the previous administration's work to allow Russia to get on the ground in Syria, make enormous gains, interfere in elections in the United States of America under the previous administration's watch. We've had a lot to clean up, and President Trump has been serious about responding to this in a way that protects America, keeps Americans safe, and every day working diligently to make sure that we keep our soldiers safe wherever any threat, whether that's from Russia or otherwise presents itself.
So what we saw there was Mike Pompeo kind of sticking to his talking points before, at the end there, kind of going off and answering the question that he really shouldn't have, giving the answer that he really shouldn't have, and I'll explain that. But let's just kind of go through, like line by line, what Mike Pompeo said and how nothing he really said answers the question. And it just raises more questions. So first he's like, I can assure you that whatever our intelligence agencies did, we did it responsibly, and we did it so that it supports the troops. But it would seem like telling the commander-in-chief, that's the responsible thing to do, making sure that he's briefed on it. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. The fact that Russia is engaged in Afghanistan in an adverse way to American interests is nothing new. That was one of Mike Pompeo's second talking points. This, again, has nothing to do with whether or not Donald Trump read his briefings, whether or not this was in his briefings. This just raises the seriousness of the New York Times reporting because it's happened for so long. Donald Trump, sure as shit, should be kept in the loop. And the fact that he's not, or he's not reading briefings, what does that mean, right? And then Mike Pompeo tries to scapegoat the Democratic members of Congress, saying, "Oh, they've had the intelligence. So what did they do about it?" It's like, well, they're not the commander in chief, so they're kind of limited as to what they can do. I don't know what you're really trying to get at there, Mike Pompeo. And the way he kind of like laughed at it just kind of signifies that Mike Pompeo, he just thinks everyone, all the leftist Democrats are just, they're pathetic. Okay, Mike. Pompeo goes on to say Russians have been selling small arms in Afghanistan. Okay, just again, raising more questions. Okay, so does Donald Trump know about this? Has he been briefed on this? Why is he being so friendly with Vladimir Putin? Why do they have the relationship that they have if they've been selling small arms, if this has been going on for a long time? Like, what is happening here? He says money has flowed from Russia since we entered Afghanistan. Again, right? Going back to this has been going on for a long time. Okay. Money has flowed to the Taliban from lots of places, including Iran. Okay, this raises more questions. Donald Trump has been using really tough rhetoric on Iran. Why is he not using the same rhetoric with Vladimir Putin, with Russia? Again, more questions, right? And then he says the president has been vicious in securing American freedom and protecting American soldiers. Look, anybody who's watched Donald Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin over the past few years, like, you cannot describe that as Donald Trump being vicious to Putin. Donald Trump has bowed to Putin every step of the way. So vicious, Mike Pompeo, you're kind of like leaning in the direction of like using the rhetoric that Donald Trump does, right? Everything's amazing. Everything's right. Okay. And then he tries to explain, right? Because he knows what he just said. He tries to explain how Donald Trump has been vicious towards Russia. He says that he put in $700 billion into the Defense Department. It's like, oh, okay, Mike, yeah, every president has done that. So what are you talking about? He withdrew from the INF treaty with Russia, and Russia's unhappy about that. Yeah, okay, here's a good way to be vicious. Withdraw from a treaty that limits them militarily. Okay, Mike Pompeo, okay. And then he says we've pushed back in Syria. Donald Trump has not pushed back in Syria. He's pulled out key forces who have been helping the Kurds, who have been helping to keep Russia at bay in Syria, as well as Bashar al-Assad at bay. He has withdrawn forces that were vital to American interests in Syria. And then he says, Mike Pompeo, this is where he finishes it, and this is where he slips up, because he says that this is all Obama's fault. Right? We had to clean up Obama's mess in Syria, and clean up Obama's mess with Russia. This is where he slips. He says, it's Obama's fault that Russia interfered in the 2016 elections. And there you go. There's your answer, right? Obama let Vladimir Putin install Donald Trump in the White House. That's essentially what that means. Mike, you got to stick to your notes, right? But see, this is like the trend for this administration, right? You have Donald Trump, who gets up onto these stages at these campaign rallies, and he'll go on and on and on. He's got his teleprompter and he's sticking to it, and then he goes off, and his aides are like, "Oh my God, Donnie's on the loose," and he says crazy things. Mike Pompeo, it's not a crazy thing; it's just the truth. He finally lets the truth slip that Russia installed Donald Trump in the White House. And that's why Donald Trump has been silent on the bounty story, right? Because Donald Trump, he can't talk bad about Vlad, because Vlad's got something over him.